Municipality of Oakland-Wawanesa would like to acknowledge and recognize that we are operating on Treaty 1 and Treaty 2 lands, being the original territory of the Anishinaabe and Dakota nations and the homeland of the Métis Nation. First item is the agenda. Be it resolved that the agenda for the October 2025 meeting be accepted as presented. Moved by Councillor Jones, seconder Councillor McDonald. All in favor? Be resolved that the minutes of the September 16th, 2025 meeting, regular meeting of council be hereby approved as circulated. Moved by Councillor Fisher, second Councillor Billet. Any errors or omissions? All in favor? Here. Be resolved that the minutes of the 2025 meeting, special meeting of council be hereby approved as circulated. Moved by Councillor Fisher, second Councillor Hatch. Any errors or omissions? In favor? And a general accounts and finance, be it resolved that October 9th, 2025 general accounts payable being checks number 8291 to 8348 in the amount of $399,773.14 be hereby approved. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconder Councillor Gullett. Be resolved that direct deposit 376 being staff payroll for the period September 9 to September 12, 2025, the amount of $730.67 be hereby approved. Moved by Councillor Hatch, seconder Councillor Gullett. Discussion. All in favor? Be resolved that direct deposit 377 being staff payroll for the period September 15 to September 26, 2025. In the amount of $13,848.82 be hereby approved. Moved by Councillor Jones, second Councillor McDonald. Discussion. All in favor? Be resolved, direct deposit 379 being staff payroll for the period September 29th to October 10th, 2025 in the amount of $15,002.83 be hereby approved. Moved by Councillor Fisher, second Councillor Gullett. Discussion. All in favor? Be it resolved, direct deposit 378 being set as council indemnities for the month of September 2025 in the amount of $4,478.91 be hereby approved. Moved by Councillor Hatch, seconder Councillor Fisher. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that October 9, 2025 utility accounts payable being checks number 1333 and to 1345 in the amount of $13,479.14 be hereby approved. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconder Councillor Gullett. Discussion. All in favor? The statement of revenue and expenditures, be it resolved that the statement of revenue expenditure, the statement of revenue and expenditure report to September 30th, 2025 be received as presented. Moved by Councillor McDonald, second Councillor Fisher. Discussion. All in favor? Be resolved that the bank reconciliations for the month of September 2025 be approved as circulated. Moved by Councillor Gullett, second Councillor Jones. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll move on to delegations.
We can invite Brett to come forward and present findings from the 2024 audit.
You guys all have a copy?
Yes.
Yes. I'll just hit the highlights, and I guess if anybody has any questions, let me know when they come up, or I'll just run through it otherwise. So I'll just kind of mention what page I'm on, and then so you guys can follow along. So we'll start on page 4 and page 5. So pages 4 and 5 are the audit reports. So basically our opinion of the numbers in the financial statements. So this is where there is a couple in the page 4, about quarter of the way down, there's basis of qualified opinion. What that means is there's a couple areas where there's things that can't be verified through standard audit procedures or additional audit procedures. One has to do with the Service River Rec. just because of the type of organization they are, they collect cash for their fees and those kind of things. This is just a general one that any type of organization that collects cash, there's no way to prove whether all the cash is there or not. Not saying that there was anything that looked like anything was missing. It's just, it's a safeguard for auditors saying we just can't tell because there's no way to track cash kind of thing. And just because of the type of organization, it handles a fair amount of that. So that's the second paragraph in there talks about asset retirement obligations. So this was brought up last year. So this one was a new accounting standard in 2023. And the qualification there is basically just for all municipalities, starting in 2023, they brought in a new standard that you had to basically assess a liability for various types of assets that you need to retire at some point. So that's lagoons, landfills, wells, buildings with asbestos, all of that type of stuff. So what this is basically saying is just those assessments haven't been done, so we can't provide our opinion on how much of a liability is potentially missing. So it's just because that's an accounting standard, we just have to state that. So the only way that one can really come out would be if those assessments are done in all of those areas. We kind of had that conversation last year. That's a cost benefit decision for you guys to do, but it is required under the accounting standards you have to follow. So
that would come into our asset management.
yeah, it's similar to
Some-
that.
some-
So, yeah, I mean, municipalities are kind of all over the place on this. Lots of them, before the standard, just referred to only landfills. So that some places, or lots of places that have done the exception of the landfills, but then they expanded this to now cover lagoons, wells, buildings, asbestos, all of that stuff. And the idea behind it is, it's just to kind of try and get an understanding of what those future costs of the municipality could be when those assets need to be decommissioned or remediated kind of thing. So,
Good question.
Yeah.
If I recall from last year, this actually requires an engineer to be involved.
yeah, in most cases, you need someone knowledgeable with what those retirement are. We have noticed some of the municipalities we deal with farther north, what they did for the asbestos one, for example, is they got an engineer to kind of provide them like, okay, for a building, like what would the square footage cost be kind of to remediate asbestos kind of thing as an example. So then they found out which buildings had asbestos and they would take that per square meter cost and apply that to each building kind of thing is what they did in that situation. So not having to have an engineer come and assess every single building for that type of thing, they just kind of gave them a general cost per square foot and applied it from there. The landfill, lagoon, those ones, probably there's not really another way around it with an engineer without doing an engineer, just because every, setup is different. The cost of decommission flows will be a different situation. So that's the added cost to this accounting centers. It usually involves getting engineers involved. So that drives costs up. So that's where it's, the cost benefit decision that you guys have to make kind of thing. As far as we know to date, having that qualification in the audit report doesn't affect anything like the province will probably ask what you're going to do about it. But from what we've heard from other municipalities, this is pretty standard in most municipalities since the standard changes. It hasn't affected like grant applications or anything like that. So as far as we know, it hasn't had any of those types of implications at this point. So from there, we can go to page 6. And most of the, if not all of the numbers we're going to talk about, also include your share of the rec commission and the handyman, just so it's not just the municipality's numbers. But so page 6, balance sheet, so all your assets and liabilities. I'll just kind of go over a little bit of the bigger changes year over year. So your accounts receivable decreased quite a bit from 23 to 24. Biggest reason for that is just there was a flood receivable at the end of 23, not at 24, but the biggest portion was just funding receivables and amounts owed back and forth between the municipality and the rec commission for the ice plant project. So it also led to the decrease in accounts payable a few lines down. As you can see, there was just money owed back and forth between the two, as well as funding owed for that project. So that's why a lot of your receivables and payables are down in 2024 versus 2023. About halfway down the page, the deferred revenue there, you can see it was about 50 grand last year. This year it's 140. The big change there is just the strategic infrastructure funding that all municipalities got. That has just been deferred. Well, the portion that hasn't been spent is going to gets deferred and will be recognized when you spend the money on applicable projects. So there's about $100,000 in that 142 that is for this strategic infrastructure funding that just hasn't been used to date. Next line after that, you can see how much the long-term debt came down from the previous year, just based on principal repayments. The right in the middle of the page, the net financial asset number there, that's, I guess, the biggest number in these financial statements is that's the number that is really used for future planning. As far as showing total strength of the organization, so you can kind of see the cash number increased significantly from 23 to 24 as well. I think that's probably more of just a timing thing, that there's more cash on hand with the rec commission at the end of the previous year, so it shows a big increase in that net financial asset number as well. That was 1.3 and went up to 2.3 million this year. So that's where the big change is. There was just significantly more cash in the rec commission at the end of the year. So I don't anticipate that will be a long-term thing. It was just a timing thing as to when the money came in versus went out. On the bottom, start the non-financial assets. Everything under the non-financial assets are kind of the things you're going to use internally. So you don't, they don't get included in that net financial asset number, because the net financial asset number is supposed to represent kind of what you have to use for future projects, future resources and things like that. Whereas capital assets, inventory, all of that stuff is kind of what you'll use internally. That's why it's kept separately. Overall, huge changes year to year, other than your inventory was up, just due to having more gravel on hand. But otherwise, not anything too significant change wise there. Skip over to the next page. The next page is the revenues and expenses. So again, I'll just go through some of the bigger changes. Obviously, the first line in the revenue section there, property taxes. It's going to just be an annual thing with costs increasing across the board. The tax levy goes up, so the property tax income goes up. The user fees were 583 down to 369. That was higher in 2023 because of some flow throughs between the municipality and the rec commission again, just with money flowing back and forth for the ice plant project. So the amount in 2024 is more representative of a normal year without any other big capital projects going on. Next one down, a couple down from there is investment income was up from 65,000 to 101,000. That really just stems from having more money in reserves. So we flip ahead a little bit more, I can tell you how much more, but I think it was about 320,000 more in reserves at the end of 24, which is 23. So just more set aside, some more interest income coming in. The last two on the revenue side is the grants. The province of Manitoba and other grant incomes are up. So a few different things on the handyman side that got consolidated in. They got a big grant for purchasing a new handyman. So that's why the province of Manitoba grant is up there. Got a grant for Tower Road. And then that's also where the portion of the strategic infrastructure funding you did spend, there's about 32,000 of that recognized under the province of Manitoba as well. Other grants are up significantly, mainly just due to the ice plant projects as well. There's about 830,000 infrastructure Canada came in, so that all kind of came in, goes under grants other, so that's why the big change there. And then under the expenses, you'll see the rec and culture expenses were up from 700,000 to 1.3 million. Again, that's really due to the municipality receiving the funding, flowing it out to the rec commission to do their projects. Otherwise, on the expense side of things, there wasn't a whole lot of significant changes. Your transportation services increased about 100,000. But again, I think that's lots of everything maintenance-wise, nothing crazy different done year over year or anything. And then the one other department that I guess dropped, it was resource conservation and industrial development. So you can see it went from 100 down to about 37. The main reason for that was just there was the RF Now payment made in 23, and then there wasn't an RF Now payment required in 2024. So that's why the big drop there from 23 to 24. So other than a lot of it is just due to general increases and this ice plant project that has really stemmed over the last couple of years, those are really the big changes. Revenue and expense others. From there, skip ahead, put a few pages, skip all the accounting notes. To page 17, number 3. The cash note here. So the paragraph at the bottom of that note kind of shows how much is in reserves in total. So you see at the end of 2024, 1 million. So again, that's why we saw before so much more interest income, more money set aside in reserves for future projects. So, which also contributes to that net financial asset number increasing, just shows you have more set aside for, those reserves in specific areas. Page 19, note number 8, the bottom of that note there. So it's more just for interest or information purposes. The bottom part shows of the 3 loans you had at the end of 2024, how much of those loans will be paid off over the next 5 years. So of the 900,000 you had at the end of 2024, over 2/3 of it would be paid off in the next 5 years. Obviously pending new debt coming in. So just information there. From there, skip ahead, read to page 27. 27 to 30 are a little bit more detailed breakdowns of the revenues and expenses, so it can just kind of points out some of the big differences I already mentioned. So under the page 27, you can see the property taxes. So this is just the municipal portion of the property taxes. So number looks low, it's because it doesn't include the school portion that you just forward on. So you can see it's 2.2 million versus 2.1 million. So that's why the increase there. So this is just a little bit more of a breakdown. So you can see fees, the sales of service there, that's where that flow through funding was reported. Why there's the drop there. Bottom of the page, you can see the grants province of Manitoba, just the change, the increase year over year. So not a whole lot of different information, just more detail of what we talked about already. And then page 31 and 32 after that are more revenue expense breakdowns. Won't really get into it. It's just there's 4 different ways you have to show the revenues and expenses in here, but they're all the same numbers. So page 33, schedule 5. This page, I'd like to point out again, another revenue and expense breakdown, but the core government columns, the first 2 columns there, those are the municipalities numbers on their own. This is the only place it shows only the municipalities revenues and expenses. Controlled entities that are blank, that would be if you had organizations that got consolidated in at 100% that you didn't share with other municipalities. And then the government partnership numbers are the rec and handy transit where you're sharing them with another municipality. So that's why you just get a percentage of them. And then again, it ties into the total. So that core government part is the only spot actually that shows the municipality on its own. The next 2 pages after that, pages 34, 35, are the reserve funds. So this shows the changes in each reserve fund year over year. And the bottom right of page 35 again shows, the end of 24, 1.5 million versus 1.2 million. It just kind of shows how much you have each of those reserves as of that date and end of year date kind of thing. So again, 300,000 more set aside for future projects. It's obviously was good. Infrastructure costs always rising and everything. So flip to page 37 quickly, I guess. 37 is schedule 8 is the balance sheet for the utilities. So again, it shows all the assets liabilities. So you can see about halfway down the page, there's a net debt number on here. So when we were looking at the consolidated statement of financial position or balance sheet before, there was that positive number. This is pretty common for all utilities that the net debt number means there's more liabilities than there's assets that you could convert into cash. And the reason for that is just you have debt because you've done capital projects recently. So it's pretty common in all utilities, but it shows that, without debt, you have no resources to do things moving forward in utilities, but that's just the way it works because your capital assets get reported below as non-financial because you're not going to sell your assets of a utility. They are what they are. You can't turn assets of a utility into cash to pay off the debt kind of thing is why it shows that way. But obviously you're going to levy taxes over the years to pay the debt off. So you can see just even with from 23 to 24, though, it went from a 705 negative to 554 negative. So the biggest change of that is obviously just as the debt gets paid down, it will increase. But if you take on more debt, then it goes the other way kind of thing. So next 2 pages after that, of the utility, not really a whole lot of changes. overall, the water fees were up slightly, just usage and rates. But otherwise, your expenses were actually down a little bit in total, so. As far as surplus and deficit for the utility, on page 39, the Public Utility Board starts with the net revenue deficit number. So we actually have a surplus of 18,000 roughly for Public Utility Board purposes. But there is a note in these financials where you actually get to add more income to that. So that note is on page 23, note 16. So you guys don't have to flip there necessarily, I can just explain it, but basically what the note. Way Public Utility Board looks at grants you've got from the federal government or provincial government is when accounting perspective, it all comes into income the year you get them. So it looks in that year that you had a huge surplus because you have a huge grant, but then you would capitalize all the expenses. So there's no expenses. What they do to flatten rates over years is this schedule basically tracks the grants you've received and you get a portion of your grant every year to offset against the amortization expense of the assets. And the idea behind that is so you don't look like you have a huge income one year and then the next 30 years that the asset gets depreciated, you have that same amount of loss. So if you have $1 million surplus one year, you're gonna have $1 million of losses of amortization for the next 30. So they let that even out. It doesn't get reported in these financial things, but this note will factor it in for Public Utility Boards. So what ends up happening is this 18,000, you actually get more income from this Public Utility Board note. So after that amount gets added in, we actually have about a $75,000 Public Utility Board surplus. So I don't know if anybody's ever showed you this, but I can leave you these pages to show you how I calculated it, just so that you don't have to worry about doing any deficit recovery stuff for Public Utility Board for 2024. Which is obviously encouraging, you know, always a struggle in utilities. Seems like by the time you get a rate study done, you just will have to start the next one to keep up with rising costs and everything else. So the fact you guys are in a surplus position is probably less common than we would see. Most utilities are kind of lagging behind. So it's encouraging to see that you guys are covering costs kind of thing on that utility side of it. From there, skip ahead right to the last page of the financials, page 45. This schedule 14, this is where the province looks for the general operating fund surplus or deficit for the year. So Public Utility Board looks at this schedule 9 we were just talking about, but for the general operating fund, they look at this first column, the general column. So what this schedule has to do is there's differences between how everything has to get reported for accounting purposes versus how you guys budget in the municipal act. So some of those are like in your budget, you budget to transfer to and from reserves. Those are revenues and expenses under the municipal act, but they're not revenues and expenses from an accounting standards. Revenues and expenses from third parties, not from yourselves. Plus on your budget, you budget to expense or cover your capital asset purchases, but under accounting standards, they all get capitalized. There's no expense. So this schedule basically just takes the accounting number back to the municipal act number at the top. So the municipal act number is the one the province cares about. If that number at the top ends up being a negative, that means you have a deficit. That's when the province reaches out to find out how you're cover that deficit. But for you guys this year, you've had just under $100,000 surplus for 2024. So no concerns there. The utility column that's in here actually doesn't mean anything. Nobody uses it. It's just there to make the totals work. Because the Public Utility Board looks at this other calculation we just mentioned. So, but yeah, so no issues as far as deficit recoveries or anything like that moving forward. Outside of that, that's kind of it on the financial statements, unless anybody has any questions.
Questions? I guess it looks like our utility is in good shape. General revenue financial position is pretty strong. So that's a good thing for our administration to keep on top of.
Yeah, I mean, this can change so fast with something that comes up that's unexpected, but
Yeah,
that's why it's nice you guys have money set aside in reserves that leaves some flexibility if something unexpected and budgeted comes up. Some resources to fall back on to try and address those things as they come up.
Anybody else have questions?
If I could, Brett, just, with the increase in water rates that had just started. Wishing to transfer the $60,000 that we normally would into,
Right.
reserve until we knew that we were actually in a surplus. So we're confirming our minutes today that that transfer didn't take place. But in having worked with Go Consulting, when we're starting to look at whether or not we need to do the simple process for a continued rate increase, it's looking as if we are going to be able to make that kind of transfer in 2025.
Okay.
But I didn't know if that would be reflected in your numbers here where you said that we were
No,
showing a $78,000 surplus.
yeah.
Because the 60 didn't.
Didn't come out, yeah, is not recorded as a transfer to the reserve, and that, the other thing, I don't know if you want us to go through the findings letter too, but that was one of the things noted in there, is like, you guys chose not to, but it wasn't documented in the minutes anywhere that you chose not to do that transfer, so, like you said, I know that's on the agenda today, so when it came in, so there is something in the audit findings letters about if it's budgeted and you don't do it, kind of need a separate resolution, just something all council is aware that that's not gonna be transferred kind of thing. And there's no issue with that for any like specific purpose reserves. The only ones that would have, but obviously you can't do that with the gas tax. You have to put the money in the gas tax reserve because you have the gas tax agreement. The only other one is the general reserve. Anything, if you budget to do anything into or out of the general reserve, if you don't end up doing it, then you have to have a public hearing. General reserve is different than all the rest of them, just it's just general purpose. So, I mean, obviously, if you don't do whatever you intended to do, if you're doing this project and you didn't end up doing it, then obviously you're not going to transfer the money. But if you did the project and then you don't transfer the money, you'd have to have a public hearing for that general reserve kind of thing. So it's just different than the rest of them. The other ones you could just pass a separate resolution of council and that's enough. But they're a little stickier with the general reserve for some reason. So yeah, I didn't know, do you want me to go through the audit findings?
That was probably, is that something that should just be council?
Yeah, it's more of a, just a council thing. So it was sent with the draft that you guys can really.
We would
read
just
through it.
excuse Mr. Rome from this part of the
Okay.
meeting, then if you're gonna go through the findings part.
Sure. Okay, so the other part of what we do is we don't just look at numbers. We have to do, look at procedures and controls and things in place. And part of what we have to do is we report whether we feel there's areas of weakness or, you know, things we've seen go wrong in other places is where most of all of this stuff stems from. So, part of that, what we do is make recommendations on where things could be strengthened, really just to protect the staff and council and everybody. Should anything happen down the road, you can say, well, we had these checks in place, kind of, you know, to do everything we could kind of thing. So that's where these stem from. The first one, has to do with inventory count sheets. So the inventory counts were done. These weren't kept. And when we're doing the audit, we want to be able to see the original count sheet being handwritten chicken scratch from the public works guy or utility guy to see that, okay, this 4 of these culverts, those 4 culverts are on the, you know, administration done, inventory count. And we like to see whoever did the count kind of sign a date that they did it. It's just because we're coming in months after the fact, there's no way for us to be able to verify that. So if they sign and date it, then it just validates the document more, and then it just flows from their count to the admin prepared listing to what's recorded in the general ledger kind of thing. Next one was around Joni's vacation or the CEO's vacation. So I think everybody else's vacation gets reviewed just by Joni. Because she can't really approve her own, the recommendation is that it should be something taken on by council to just review her vacation bank even at the end of the year and sign off on a sheet to make sure that you guys are aware of what's kind of owed to her.
I've been checking those. I've been initially.
Okay.
So you want it for council though, all council?
It doesn't have to be all of council. No, it would be like the listing that's prepared at the end of the year. I think you're probably looking at every payroll.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it would be more so the summary that's done at the end of the year.
Because typically, I guess at the end of the year, we do a vacation carryover that council approves. I think I'm listed on that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's that document that you do, the year that actually Kate said as long as Dave signs and dates that, that's good. That's what you want, like.
Yeah, it's just, like I said, we have no way of knowing, you know, what you look at the time. So if it's signed and dated or whatever, then it's easier for us to vote. I mean, as long as you're not fudging the dates on there, but I mean, that's different matter for sure. So, not that we're concerned about that. So. By any means, so, the next one is, I guess to do with vacation rates for some of the union contract employees. So I think Katie had mentioned this to you as well.
Yeah.
Melissa. So, the union contract is a little bit different than labor standards. So labor standards, you know, you get 2 weeks to start, so it's 4%. You get 3 weeks after that, it's 6%. It's different in the union agreements. It's 100 hours and 50 hours. So it works out to like not an even 4%. It's like, I can't remember what the percentages worked out to. It's a little bit different. So there was just some small differences there in the vacation rates. So Katie had communicated that with Melissa to get corrected. We've implemented that already. So, and then the next one here was about the utility reserve transfer, which we kind of talked about already. Just if you're budgeted to do it and don't end up just to pass a separate resolution. So there's documentation that all of council is aware that that's not happening, and it's wrote down should anybody ever question you. And then it was like, well, it was decided this council meeting, this date, that, you know, all of council decided that it wasn't to be done. The last two tie back to that asset retirement obligation stuff that we talked about at the start, as far as the lagoon closures, asbestos assessments, those kind of things. So it's really just a recommendation that we have to recommend, because it's required in the auditing standards. We recommend the assessments get done. But again, we understand the cost benefit decision you guys have to make on those. So, and other than that, that was it. So nothing crazy significant or anything, which we like to see. So, but yeah, it's just kind of the other role we have to take as part. And for the most part, all of the recommendations are just either things we've seen ourselves or heard about in other places. So we just try to make everybody aware as possible of what has happened and what could happen. So hopefully it doesn't happen to you guys. So,
have you heard, and I know you, other municipalities, I mean, the government's looking at, French government's looking at putting a lot of criteria on us as to the internet and all that kind of stuff, and flow of IT stuff. Are they gonna, is that gonna be coming into the audit now? Is that?
it kind of actually has already, like the IT stuff has gotten more into the audit the last couple of years, which your staff can probably attest to. In the past, we didn't really have to dig into the admins, the IT systems and setups as much as we do now. That was just something in 2 years ago kind of got implemented. So we actually had to, we used to just send process questionnaires about how things were recorded in that. And now it's like, okay, what system are you using? How are you doing your backups? What programs do you use? You know, who upkeeps your IT, all of that stuff. So it's actually already kind of incorporated that way into the audit. Yeah, I know the province is looking to kind of pass off, I think, more of that stuff on to their users, and not just the municipal world, the not-for-profit worlds and stuff too. Their funding models and everything are really changing. That they're like, okay, we used to look after this for you now, but now we'll give you a grant for it. But here's all of the restrictions you've got to follow to do the grant. They're kind of changing how that is working in all areas of government, kind of thing. And not for small places, we definitely see it there for sure.
Yeah, I kind of thought something's gonna happen because.
Yeah, I think that the rules are a little strict on those, so I think it's less strict. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, something else, Council? Thanks very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, so once we get all the sign sets and we can get it all issued for it. If everything comes up after, let me know.
are we allowed to release the draft document as it is now, or wait until we have the final version that is?
Public, we would prefer wait till you get the final one, just because then it's got our letterhead and everything on it. So, okay, yeah, that would be preferred. If you have to get it for like funders or anything like that, then that's not an issue for them, it just, yeah, to the general public, it's better because our letter and everything. All right,
Good, thank you.
I have a question.
sure.
So for this chicken scratch inventory, what if I did both?
Did both.
Like I went out and counted and I also put it in the spreadsheet, so. But you just want some kind of tally sheet? Like-
Yeah, no, and it's not a problem that you're necessarily doing both, it was just, we like to see the actual physical original count sheet, whether that's.
I'll just make something.
Yeah, so if you have a count sheet that's, this size of culvert, you have 4, and then what we're doing, really all we're doing from that is checking, okay, the quantities on this one, agree to the quantities input into the spreadsheet. And then on the spreadsheet, we test a sample of like the fence or culvert or super
Okay.
yard of gravel or whatever. So,
You just have to sign the spreadsheet. It's fine too. I talked
Yeah.
about it.
so yeah, if you're doing kind of them all together, in conjunction with one person, then signing it in the spreadsheet would be fine. Yeah. That's good. Great.
Thank you very much.
You'll edit.
Yeah, I'll just scratch that, yeah.
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 Yeah, I vote for there, yeah.
Yeah, so it's
You
just,
take this,
yeah, so the only time that would really could change is if it's a capital project and we might show it, like I was saying, if I'm in yeah, that would not grant, yes. Government grant, yeah. This is in essence, you getting the government grant over a number of years instead of all one inspection. Yeah, if you have questions,
Okay.
send Katie me so I can help with
yeah,
it.
thank you.
Hey. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, be resolved that the presentation from Brett Fordyce, this partnership of chartered accounts regarding 2024 audit statements be received. Moved by Councillor Jones, secondly Councillor McDonald, all in favor. Be resolved that the audited financial statement be approved and the municipality take full responsibility for the financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2020. Moved by Councillor Hatch, second Councillor Jones, all in favor. Be it confirmed that no transfer was made to the utility reserve in 2024. Moved by Councillor McDonald, second Councillor Billet. This is in response to that audit requirement. Okay. All in favor? Great. Okay, be resolved that the regular meeting of council be recessed to allow council to hold a public hearing to receive present representation from any person who wishes to make them in respect to a conditional use application. Moved by Councillor Gullit, seconder. Councillor McDonald, all in favor? Great.
If I could just note that a conditional use and a variation application. Variation came in afterwards.
Any problem with that, this mover and seconder? No. Okay. So,
Okay, so the first public hearing is for a conditional use application, which is to allow a modular home to be located at 114th 7th Street in Wawanesa, and that's in an RG residential general zone. If there's anyone in attendance who would like to make representation, please come forward at this time. There is no one, and we had no phone calls or anything with respect to that application.
whereas all representatives in regard to conditional use application number C6/2025 to allow a mobile home on lot 21, plan 6, block 6 rather, plan 21, DLC located on 114 7th Street in Wawanesa in an RG residential general zone under Gullet have been dealt with, therefore be it resolved here to be concluded. Moved by Councillor Hatch, seconder, Councillor Fisher, all in favor? Carried.
Okay, and the next public hearing is the variation, and this is to allow for a storage unit in the rural central zone in Carroll. And it is to reduce the site size from 15,000 feet to 10,000 feet and to reduce the site width from 100 feet to 78 feet. And again, I would invite anybody with wanting to make representation to come forward. And there is no one. I did have a phone call on it, and once it was explained, they were fine with this.
Okay. Whereas all representatives in regards to the variation application number V3/2025 to reduce the site area from 15,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet and the site width from 100 feet to 78 feet to allow for construction of a storage building on lots 8 through 10. Block 5, Plan 69 BLTO being 33 First Avenue, Carroll, Manitoba, within an RC rural central zone under Willocks have been dealt with, therefore be it resolved that the public hearing be concluded. Moved by Councillor Jones, seconded Councillor Gullett. All in favor? Okay, that gets you to
Communications.
communications.
So under the order of communications, there are several from the Association of Manitoba Municipalities. They are dated September the 15th, 3 from September the 16th, 2 on September the 19th, October the 1st, the 2nd, the 7th, and 2 on October the 10th. There was a business and community newsletter that is dated September of 2025. Community Futures provided information on their Visionary Futures Conference that was held October 22nd, or is being held October 22nd. Federation of Canadian Municipalities had several communiques. They are dated September 22nd, the 29th, and October the 6th. Mr. Dan Gullett provided a copy of a letter that he had sent to the province with respect to road concerns on PR 40. The Keystone Planning District provided information from Souris Glenwood with respect to a public hearing for a new development plan. Lions Club of Wawanesa sent a thank you letter. Manitoba Association of Recycling and Reduction Forum took place October the 15th and 16th. Manitoba Association of Senior Communities sent out their communications newsletter. The Minister of Environment and Climate Change responded to a letter with respect to drainage in the south half of 2017. Municipal and Northern Relations provided information on ministers' meetings at the AMM conference and provided for the second payment of the operating grant, information on the homeowner affordability tax credit, on the Canada Post disruption, and on the statutory review of planning legislation. Public Utilities Board provided their fall newsletter, and Southwest Horizon provided information on their trustee representative.
Okay, be it resolved that the above notification be received. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconder Councillor Fisher. Discussion. All in favor? Under committee reports, we have Councillor Fisher, you have a written report. Councillor Jones, you have no. Report. Councillor Hatch, you have a written report, anything to add to yours?
And nothing to add here.
Councillor Gullett, you have a written report, anything to add?
Nothing to add.
Councillor McDonald, written report, anything to add to yours? Any further on mine? CAO, anything to add to yours?
Nothing to add.
Financial officer and Public Works, anything to add to your report?
I just wanted to add that I had talked to MWM about our contract for next year.
Okay. Fire chief report is there. Okay, be it resolved that the verbal and written reports be received, moved by Councillor Gullett, seconded. Councillor McDonald, all in favor? Great. Okay, so now we have the bylaw. Bylaw number 49-2025 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 04-2019 with respect to setback for wind energy generation towers and to amend map 2 with respect to roll number 212910. It's first reading. Be it resolved that bylaw number 49-2025 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 04-2019 with respect to setbacks for wind energy generation towers and to amend map 2 with respect to roll number 212910 be read a first time. Moved by Councilor McDonald, seconder. Councilor Fisher. There's no discussion on a first reading. All in favor? Carried. Okay, your general business. Be it resolved, the conditional use application C6/2025 to allow modular home on lot 21, block 6. Plan 21, BLTO located on 114 7th Street in Wawanesa, Manitoba, in an RG residential general zone, under Gullet be approved. Moved by Councilor Hatch, seconder. Councilor Jones, all in favor? Be resolved the variation application number V3/2025 to reduce the site area from 15,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet and the site width from 100 feet to 78 feet to allow for construction of a storage building on lots 8 through 10, block 5, plan 69, BLTO, being 33 First Avenue, Carroll, Manitoba, within the RC Rural Center Zone under Willux be approved. Moved by Councilor Gullet, second Councilor McDonald. All in favor? Carried. Be resolved that the proposed fiber path along Road 43 North between Road 107 West and 106 West and along Road 45 North between Road 108 West and Road 107 West outlined on the maps attached to correspondence dated September 24th, 2025 from RF now be approved subject to the terms and conditions of the installation agreement dated October 26, 2023. By Counselor Fisher, seconder. Councilor Hatch, discussion. No issues with Public Works. All in favor? Be resolved to propose fiber path along Road 46 North and Road 96 West to extend fiber to a customer in the RM of member of South Cyprus outlined on the maps attached to correspondence dated October 14, 2025 from RF now be approved subject to the terms and conditions of the installation agreement dated October 26, 2023. Moved by Councilor Gullet, seconder. Councilor McDonald, discussion.
So is this fiber path thing just a percentage of our,
Well, it's coming from our side,
Our side.
our municipality into there.
It's probably with the river right there, right, it's but kind of off of our side.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, be it resolved that the Manitoba Municipalities online report for the month of September 2025 be received and any necessary action to the bylaw maintenance program be hereby approved. Moved by Councilor Jones, seconder. Councilor Fisher, discussion. All in favor? Okay, whereas $15,000 was allocated in the capital plan to the purchase of a snow blade for the town loader to be funded the equipment reserve, and whereas the cost of the blade was $16,490 plus provincial sales tax to that $1,154.30. Now therefore be it resolved that an additional amount not to exceed $2,650 be funded through the equipment reserve for the purchase of said snow blade. Moved by Councilor McDonald, second Councilor Gullet, discussion.
what's happening with the existing?
So you could ask backup or go to surplus sale eventually.
Just go into our stock to be sold.
Stock
Well,
inventory?
inventory.
Let's decide.
All in favor? Whereas applications for the Growth, Renewal and Opportunity Funding Program had to be submitted 2025, and whereas the municipality was asked to support an application by the municipality of Souris Glenwood to support upgrades to the Souris Glenwood Veterinary Clinic, of which the municipality of Oakland-Wawanesa is a partner in the veterinary district. Now therefore be it resolved that the application by the municipality of Souris Glenwood for funding through the Growth, Renewal and Opportunity Funding Program for upgrades to the veterinary clinic be supported. Moved by Councilor Jones, seconder Councilor Fisher. Discussion. All in favor?
It.
Be resolved, this meeting does now adjourn to meet again on Tuesday, November 18th, 2025 at 1 P M in the municipal office in Wawanesa. Moved by Councilor McDonald, all in favor? Carried.